Well, good Sunday afternoon to you on this 2nd of August, 2020, as we are in day 4 of tracking Tropical Storm Isaias. Remember to make all decisions solely based upon official forecast data from the National Hurricane Center, your local emergency management jurisdictions, or from National Weather Service offices in your area or state. So like I said, we are in day 4 of tracking Isaias, and the storm looking a little bit healthier today as shear has relaxed. This morning still was a problem for the storm. As you can see, the very strong westerly shear was blowing the tops off of these thunderstorms and pockets of rain in the outer rain bands of Isaias. And you can see in the morning hours, the tops of these storms were just being blown off because of the shear, and that's also why the top of the storm, Isaias, the storm I'm referring to, is kind of disheveled and off to the side. A lot of the impacts are well off coast right now due to the westerly shear, like I was mentioning, and it's kind of hard to tell. The center was exposed yesterday, the center of circulation, but today it has been a little bit more covered up by this big explosion of thunderstorm activity displaced off to the east. However, the storm did intensify just slightly to 70 miles per hour, but really going forward, it's a moot point whether we have a hurricane or a tropical storm. The impacts are going to remain the same, and they're going to be felt all the way up the east coast, all the way up into maritime Canada as well. So that is something we have to watch out for. Don't get too caught up in the category. It's really just technical details at that point. But anyway, getting back to the center of the position of the storm, if we check on radar, you can see that Isaias is trying to get its act together. We have all these outer rain bands affecting Florida, tropical downpours down in this area, but still staying well offshore. And this radar loop is a little bit deceiving. I would say the center of Isaias is about right here. And that is a little bit deceiving because a lot of this activity just plays off to the east, but at the last analysis at the 5 p.m. update, the center of circulation was located northeast of Port St. Lucie and off of the coast of Florida here, and it will continue riding up the coast this way and then kind of give some space between itself and the United States coastline before moving up all the way and making landfall, likely somewhere between Charleston and Wilmington, coming on shore somewhere as a tropical storm and continuing to ride up through North Carolina, eastern South Carolina, and even up through Virginia, giving a healthy dose of rainfall and tropical storm force conditions all the way up the eastern seaboard. So to summarize that, we have the Hurricane Center's forecast cone here, currently analyzed just off the coast of Florida, and we have tropical storm warnings posted all the way up through about Cape Hatteras, or just about Cape Hatteras, and then tropical storm warnings all the way up through Long Island, New York, and even up into coastal Connecticut as well. You can see a very long-reaching storm, and again, it's a moot point whether it's actually a hurricane or tropical storm. With maximum sustained winds, that's the strongest tropical storm you can possibly have, and 75 miles per hour is the, in air quotes, weakest hurricane you can possibly have, but the impacts are going to remain the same. So don't get too caught up on the categorizations or the technical details. Just know that a lot of rain and a lot of wind are coming your way if you live in South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, Maryland, New Jersey, Delaware, the District of Columbia, even eastern Pennsylvania and southern New York, and areas up through New England and into New Brunswick, into Nova Scotia, and into eastern Quebec, and also Newfoundland and Labrador, all the way up here in Canada. Still a lot going on in terms of impacts from Isaias, even though it will be a tropical depression at that point. So moving on to the actual alerts that we have here, we have hurricane watches still posted for this area down here, and they still have kept the hurricane watch, I guess, because in that area there is still the potential for Isaias to regain hurricane status. So this is a technicality once again, but tropical storm warnings are in effect, hurricane watch is in effect. That's a little bit confusing for the public, but they're just covering all bases to say, hey, you might still experience hurricane conditions when Isaias approaches that location from about just south of Myrtle Beach up through around Jacksonville, North Carolina, and Camp Lejeune in that area. And then we have tropical storm warnings all the way up the Florida coast through Savannah, through Charleston, up through Wilmington, up through Cape Hatteras and the Outer Banks of North Carolina for now. And then we even have tropical storm watches still posted for Northern Virginia, up through Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, southeastern Pennsylvania, and New York. So this is a storm reaching from New York all the way down to Charleston, South Carolina, where the worst impacts are expected to be felt. And I'm assuming National Weather Service of Wakefield will fill in this area, this gap here in the tropical storm watch category for areas like Norfolk, Richmond, Williamsburg and areas like that, Interstate 64 corridor, will still have tropical storm watches posted. They just have not put that out yet, trying to get the most accurate guidance they can for the eastern shore of Virginia and Maryland. But you can see, a wide-ranging storm and even inland tropical storm watches and warnings. A few years ago, here, well, there's a lot going on here, but we have a tropical cyclone statement, tropical storm warning, flash flood watch, and the statements aren't really a warning per se. They're just listed here. But the flash flood watch, as you can see, active for the next 44 hours. So it's a long duration event. It's going to be a lot of rain, a lot of wind for a good period of time. Not as slow as any other past storms or anything like that. It still is moving at a decent clip to the north-northwest, and then at this point it will be moving to the north-northeast. But tropical storm warnings are hoisted inland because a few years ago the National Weather Service as a whole gave jurisdiction to inland offices to issue tropical storm warnings when, if you have a storm coming inland, like, say Florence or something that did tropical storm conditions were felt all the way into Raleigh area, and there was not a product that was accurate enough to describe the impact. So they decided to not just limit that to coastal counties, but also inland counties as well. Hence why you have that up through Johnston County here, Wayne County, Sampson County, Cumberland County, Robeson County, and all down here into inland South Carolina as well, and now in Northern Virginia up into Stafford County, Prince William County, and Fairfax County. All these counties up into here through New Jersey as well, because the tropical storm conditions are expected to be felt inland. But on to the main story, which is going to be the rainfall from this storm. The wind impacts are certainly going to be felt, but the main point is that Isaias is going to bring a significant amount of rain to the entire eastern seaboard. Some of those areas have been pretty waterlogged from summertime thunderstorms. Some have been dry, especially in northern Virginia. But the point is that anywhere from Charleston, South Carolina, again, up through the eastern Piedmont and coastal plain of North Carolina, up through central and Tidewater, Virginia, through Maryland, which some areas in Maryland are very susceptible to flooding. I think of Ellicott City. And then all the way up to Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, all the areas up in here, anywhere from 2 to 6 inches of rain expected, with pockets of heavier rain expected and in the forecast. And what that spells for the greatest flash flood risk, we have a moderate risk, which is a pretty high categorization on the weather prediction scale here for rainfall. We have a lot of rain headed this way, and that could pose risk for flash flooding. So we have this moderate risk outline. And you can look here, nothing today, but day 2 is through Tuesday morning. So this includes all day on Monday through early Tuesday. Charleston, well, that's not what I meant to do there. Charleston up through Raleigh, North Carolina, getting the worst of the impacts. And then day 3, including most of the day on Tuesday night, early Wednesday morning, anywhere from Raleigh up to New York, seeing the heaviest rain and wind from Isaias. So kind of a 2-stage system. We have the Florida part today. We have the North and South Carolina part tomorrow. We have the Mid-Atlantic on Tuesday. And then beyond into Wednesday, we have the New England and Eastern Canada points of the forecast, where Isaias is anticipated to still bring a significant amount of water and wind to those areas. This is a graphic that was loading when I clicked that a minute ago, but I was trying to avoid that. So something to notice here is in terms of, we can look at the river flooding and freshwater flooding. So usually we're worried about coastal flooding with storms and saltwater intrusion when you have water coming off of the coast inland. But something to keep in mind is the freshwater flooding from this. When you have all of the water falling inland, all the water falling in this whole region here, that water has to go somewhere. And it's going to end up draining out toward the coast. And sometimes that can get bottled up and you can cause, major river flooding, which is what happened with Hurricane Florence. You had water coming up against the coast, you had water coming down from the Piedmont, and you had very bad flooding in this area in North Carolina. This is not going to be a Florence. This is not going to be some catastrophic flooding event, but there is going to be a lot of rain, and a lot of the flood gauges in eastern North Carolina are already forecasting to be at moderate flood stage here in Neuse River in Clayton, Neuse River in Smithfield, minor flooding in down here into Cape Fear River. The Tar River is also another river that is known to flood during these tropical events, and down here into the Little Petey River, the Great Petey River, Waccamaw River, all the rivers down in here, at least in near flood stage or minor flood stage, and I'm assuming that these are all going to kind of light up like a Christmas tree, unfortunately, with the rainfall anticipated. sometimes the stream flooding gauges can underestimate just a little bit, because depending on where exactly the rain falls will determine where the worst flooding occurs. So that's something we'll have to watch out for. And even up into Virginia, where there's a different river forecast office, but some of these flood gauges are also going to need to be watched, just because there's going to be this significant amount of rain here. Anywhere from 4 to 6 inches in this large swath of rain, all the way from Charleston up to really the greater New York metropolitan area. The swath of heavier rain is going to be a big concern with Isaias. Looking at some of the other impacts, again, I mentioned again, just to reiterate, this is literally a Charleston to New York storm. We have this is the actual wind threat. So I was talking about rain, but to switch gears now and talk about the wind threat, potential for wind to 58 to 73 miles per hour. That's tropical storm force in these orange areas currently anticipated. So really, the Interstate 95 being right about here and going up, anywhere east of there is going to, that's actually a very good analog. So east of the I-95 corridor, you're going to probably experience prolonged periods of tropical storm force winds, gust up to 50, 60, 70 miles per hour. Power outages are likely with that kind of wind. That's like having a severe thunderstorm constantly in your backyard with those gusts. But then west of the I-95 corridor, you can still expect gusts up to that force at times, but really the effects of a tropical cyclone really diminish exponentially as you get away from the center. So west of the Interstate 95 corridor, I really am not too concerned in terms of the wind threat. There's really not much there to be had for that. But if we switch gears to storm surge, that's limited to the coast, of course. South Carolina and the very extreme tip of southern North Carolina is likely to get the worst in terms of storm surge impacts. And that is, if I can zoom in here, maybe I can. Looks like the page just froze up on me. But from Charleston up to the southern tip of North Carolina, potential for storm surge up to 3 feet. So you have that in addition to the rainfall that's coming. You have water being pushed up against the shoreline. Now it wants to zoom in when I'm not ready for it. Let's see here. Well, we're going to just move on from that and talk about the flooding rain threat. So the flooding rain threat, of course, there is this highlighted area up here, and here I think this red really needs to be extended up to the eastern part of the forecast cone right now, because a lot of this rainfall is going to be enhanced by an additional forcing over here, and it's going to be cause a lot of heavy rain over a large area. And that's becoming a more concerning part of the forecast for Isaias, is the rainfall over such a large area. And that is, certainly something we need to watch as the progress of Isaias goes. And then as far as a tornado threat, again, you usually have that to the east and north of the center of the circulation. So if you have Isaias making landfall and coming up along this path, the coastal plain of North Carolina, the inner banks and outer banks of North Carolina are really going to be under the greatest threat for any kind of spin-up tornadoes. They're very quick with tropical cyclones, usually very short-lived. By the time they're warned, usually the tornado is probably over, and it's very short-lived, but it can cause significant damage if the right conditions exist. So just make sure you're vigilant and make sure that you're prepared for a prolonged period of tropical storm force conditions with the possibility of quick spin-up tornadoes. Something you need to be vigilant and make sure you have multiple ways to warn yourself in case of any severe weather within the tropical storm threat. So again, I just want to highlight the rainfall and know that that is going to be probably the biggest story come Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We will mostly be talking about the rain from Isaias and the tropical storm force winds knocking out power to several tens of thousands of people, likely in eastern South Carolina, eastern North Carolina, even up through Virginia. It's likely to have loss of power just because that tropical storm force winds and the gusty winds, and you have power lines and all kinds of things connect to give a breeding ground for power outages with tropical systems. So something we'll have to watch out for. But overall, I think the main story with Isaias is going to be the flooding rains, and we'll have to keep an eye and see how this rainfall forecast evolves in future updates from the National Hurricane Center. But I will leave with a look at our storm. Isaias, currently a tropical storm with 70-mile-per-hour winds, looking a bit healthier, unfortunately, as it continues its trek up the East Coast and will make impacts mainly felt from the Charleston area all the way up to New York City. So going to be a true East Coast rider. So that's all I have for this video today. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to comment on this video or leave me a message, and I will see you in the next update tomorrow. Stay safe.